Memorial Day was first commemorated by an organized group of black freed slaves less than a month after the Confederacy surrendered. Recent years, the origins of how and where Decoration Day began has sparked lively debate amongst historians. However, Yale historian David Blight, asserting the holiday is rooted in a moving ceremony, was conducted by freed slaves on May 1st, 1865, at the tattered remains of a Confederate prisoner of war camp. It was a Charleston, Washington racecourse and jockey club, today known as Hampton Park. The ceremony is believed to have included a parade of as many as 10,000 people, including 3,000 African American school children singing the Union marching song, John Brown's Body. They were carrying armfuls of flowers and went to decorate the graves. Interesting that there would be a tie back to Hudson with that song from John Brown. Most importantly, whether Charleston's Decoration Day was the first is attended by Charleston's black community. Hey Jay, Mike. We'll continue on. This is why you moved in closer so you can hear this.
All right, y'all. So there, he decided to continue to speak, and it was after, we don't have it here, he continued to give the history, okay? And after he gave the history and then went back to the part of his speech that was not part of the black folks in the history, they turned the microphone back on.
Welcome to the Armwood Opinion channel here on YouTube, and today we're talking about why critical race studies, or critical race theory as it's now most often called, is necessary. And we had a classic example of why that occurred on Memorial Day in the state of Ohio. And you saw the clip with retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Bernard Kemter, a white man, talking about the fact that Memorial Day was originally a holiday that was started by black former slaves who had fought in the Civil War. I have ancestors that fought in the Civil War. This was in an Ohio cemetery, so this was in the North. Ohio was part of the North after the Missouri Compromise. So they cut the mic off. Kemter thought it was a technical glitch, but it was purposeful. It was done on purpose because the white people, did not want the true history of Memorial Day told. And when he stopped talking about black people, the mic came back on. This is America. This is how America has always taught history. Think about what you were taught in school. You were taught Columbus discovered America, even though there were people living here. How more demeaning and insulting can you be to claim you discovered something where people were living? Were they not people in your mind? Are you that sick? We were taught that the Civil War was not about slavery. I was taught that in high school by my teacher, who I actually liked, my favorite teacher, Miss Dryband. 50 years ago, in 1971, in American history. I argued with her about this. I told her that that was a crazy idea, that it was obviously about slavery. But she disagreed. She didn't convince me because I thought it was crazy. I knew better. But America has always lied about its history.
Was the American Civil War fought because of slavery? More than 150 years later, this remains a controversial question. Why? Because many people don't want to believe that the citizens of the southern states were willing to fight and die to preserve a morally repugnant institution. There has to be another reason, we are told. Well, there isn't. The evidence is clear and overwhelming. Slavery was, by a wide margin, the single most important cause of the Civil War, for both sides. Before the presidential election of 1860, a South Carolina newspaper warned that the issue before the country was the extinction of slavery, and called on all who were not prepared to surrender the institution to act. Shortly after Abraham Lincoln's victory, they did. The secession documents of every Southern state made clear, crystal clear, that they were leaving the Union in order to protect their peculiar institution of slavery, a phrase that at the time meant the thing special to them. The vote to secede was 169-0 in South Carolina, 166-7 in Texas, 84-15 in Mississippi. In no Southern state was the vote close. Alexander Stephens of Georgia, the Confederacy's vice president, clearly articulated the views of the South in March 1861. Our new government, he said, was founded on slavery. Its foundations are laid. Its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, submission to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. Yet despite the evidence, many continue to argue that other factors superseded slavery as the cause of the Civil War. Some argue that the South only wanted to protect states' rights. But this raises an obvious question. The states' rights to what? Wasn't it to maintain and spread slavery?
America. This is why we need other narratives, other stories, other views of history. History is a look at the past through the prism of the people who are telling it. It's really very, very important to me to think about the line in Alex Haley's book Roots, which is sitting right next to me, where he says the conquerors write the history. To me, that was the most important line in the book. The conquerors write the history. And this is so, so true. This is why we need critical studies, critical race studies, and a critical race theory that explains history from the perspective of different people. The history of the battle, as an example, of Little Bighorn, where General Custer was defeated, is described as a massacre. In some texts it was when I was in school, but of course it was described by the indigenous people, I'm sure, in their folklore as a great victory. I remember the same Miss Dryband criticizing me in a paper, even though I got an A on it, on the Boxer Rebellion in China, when the Empress Dowager was being challenged for her rule by the British, and they were pouring opium into China. And I said that the Boxers were right in killing the Europeans because they were invaders, they were conquerors. And she said that I should keep my opinions to myself. And I laughed at her. But once again, this is why critical race studies and critical race theory is important. History is not objective. History is not neutral. Those concepts are garbage. And that's one of the great gifts of critical race theory and the work of people like Derek Bell, the former great Harvard law professor and founder of critical race theory. He argued that how can you argue for neutral principles when you're trying to get a conqueror off your back? Or as Desmond Tutu put it during the apartheid struggle, that if an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, that mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Africans have a very profound way in the various cultures of explaining things, and I think Desmond Tutu put that one very, very clearly. So the idea that history is neutral is nonsense. So critical race studies is critical. And this Memorial Day, we saw an excellent example of how that the American story is a story often filled with lies. And we saw the lying right in our face when the microphone was cut off. And Cindy Suchan, the president of the Hudson American Legion Auxiliary, asked that retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Bernard Kemter change his speech, but he wouldn't do it. We asked him to modify his speech, and he chose not to do that. Cindy Suchan, president of the Hudson American Legion Auxiliary, told the Beacon Journal. So they have admitted that they didn't want the history of Memorial Day and black people told. He said, "I was very disappointed that someone would choose to censor my speech." This is America at its core. The American narrative, land of the free, home of the brave, is false. It's a lie. The American mythology of its creation is a lie. We must modernize our view, expand it to incorporate the truth and the many different truths that are there. And that's all that critical race theory is asking for. That's what critical race studies is looking at it. And I want you to have a good day. This is John Armwood once again. Hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel to get more political and educational content like this. And remember, resistance is not futile. Take care.